Hey friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me in my craft room today. I was gifted some products from Waffle Crafts. I'm sure you've been seeing the new grip mats all over your feeds and YouTube and everything, but I wanted to share how I am using the new Waffle Flower craft tools, the grip mats, and then they also gave me some fun supplies to use in some projects. I really love the retro hugs stamp and the dies, so I'm going to be using those in my project today, but I will show you some of the other products they gifted me, so keep an eye out for them in the future. But what's most important is the new grip mat and these grip mat guides. So I'm going to open these up. As with most of my products, I usually just cut off the tops and I use the packaging as sleeves. So here is the grip mat. I have the 6x6 side and there are two guides in there, which is really nice. So if I ever lose one or mess one up or it gets really inky and I can't clean it, there's a second one. And then I love the trio set for rotational guides, for placement. It's very cool. I end up just using what's in the 6x6 because I wanted to show what you could just do with the basic set, the grip mat and this A2 placement card. So I'm going to start off with stenciling, but I am kind of just brainstorming right now what I'm going to do. So while I'm thinking, I'm opening up the rest of the packages. I have, like I said, the retro hug stamps and these dies, and then this little gift bag, which I will show you some of the fun products in there. I thought I had stencils and this cute little puppy die, but there were a few more things tucked in there, like these little stickers, which I guess I knew I was getting those. They were very obvious. I have these layered stencils. It's called Swag, and I believe it goes with a hot foil plate, but I'm just going to use it on its own. And then check out these fun little dies that I also got. This little puppy is so adorable, so definitely stay tuned to see that on a future project. So I grabbed those swag coloring stencils out that I knew I wanted to use, and I'm just peeling apart the grip mat. I will say I was really worried about pulling the plastic pieces off the sides because I didn't want them to get like super curly and then I wouldn't be able to get it back onto my grip mat very easily. So I am making sure to keep that as flat as I can while I am pulling. I'm just using a magnet here to help me keep a good grip on those sheets, and they end up being just fine. So I went ahead and I centered it on my glass mat. This is a Glassboard Studio magnetic mat, and I have the grid on there, so I centered it on and I played around first with some warm tone colors, but I'm just going to show you how I stenciled my cool tones. So I centered my piece of cardstock that I have cut down to 4¼ by 5½ to the center of my grip mat. And then there are some great little etched lines for an A2 size piece of cardstock on the stencil. So I just placed it right on top following those guides and made sure my stencil also stuck to the grip mat. Now, usually I kind of fast forward when I do my blending, but I want to show you how, I mean, I'm not aggressively blending, but I'm going in there pretty hard. And I'm adding color in with my brushes. This is Distress Inks, and I wanted to show that my stencil is not moving. It's awesome. I absolutely love this for stenciling so much. I can see myself using this all of the time, this grip mat for stenciling. I absolutely love that I'm just going in there and I'm ink blending, I'm going in between colors, and my camera's shaking a little. That's how much you can tell I'm, really getting in there with my brushes, and my stencil is not moving at all. And it's only attached really on the sides there, a little bit on the top and bottom, but really gripped onto the sides. And my paper is also not moving because it's nicely gripped and attached to my grip mat. So now I'm taking the second stencil and I'm lining it up. Again, there's little etch marks so you can see exactly where an A2 piece of cardstock would fit behind. Pressing it again on the tops and sides to make sure it's secured against the grip mat. And I'm going to come in with some different colors. And again, you can see my camera shaking a little bit because I'm really getting in there and I'm ink blending. And I'm going to leave this in again too. Like I said, I normally just kind of fast forward to the blending, but I really wanted you to see how handy this grip mat is for stenciling and just how easy it is to get into your details of the stencils with your blending brushes or tools, and I'm just having no issues at all. It's so fun. So now let me pick up my mess. You can see my stencil reveal here, and you can see also how easy it is to take the paper off the grip mat. I use a thinner cardstock a lot of times for ink blending, especially when I'm going to be doing some foiling on it, and I wanted to make sure I was using the thinnest cardstock I had so you could see that it peels off without any type of tearing or ripping. So it's super sturdy and sticky, but also not sticky enough that it's ripping your cardstock. I'm going to do some die cutting so I can do some ink blending on my die cut sentiment. So I have the lowercase hugs from the Retro Hugs die set, and I'm going to stick the negative space onto my mat. And I'm going to place the little letters inside so they are evenly spaced for some ink coloring. Instead of my brushes this time, I'm just going to use my daubers, and I'm adding in the colors along hugs. So I'm using the same 4 colors that I used for the stenciling just to add in some color onto my sentiment. So now that that's done, I'm going to put my stuff away, or not daubers, sorry, my pouncers, and I'm going to grab my shadow for the hug sentiment, as well as this cute little character here, his little smiley face extending the arms out to give a hug. I'm going to cut my shadow die out of some purple glitter paper. This is from the Rainbow A2 paper pack from scrapbook.com, and I'm going to run it through my die cut machine, and you'll see how this grip mat is great for gluing your sentiments together. So I'm going to take my shadow and I'm going to pop out all of my letters from the hugs sentiment that I did my little ink pouncing on. In order to glue the letters down, I'm using my reverse tweezers to hold the letter in place, and then I'm grabbing my Artiste glue with my fine point tip to add the adhesive to the back of the letter. And here I just stuck it quickly down onto the grip mat, and I could pick up each letter, add adhesive, and glue it down, and my glitter paper isn't moving, which helps make it really easy to add in each of those letters. Now I got a little impatient and my S isn't totally dry, so when I peel off my hug sentiment, it is going to go flying, but that's just because I'm gluing to glitter paper, nothing to do with the grip mat. As you can see, it did cause my paper to curl just a little, but it was easily fixable, and I was able to attach my S no problem, and my sentiment is ready to go onto my background. Now I thought my sentiment was going to get a little lost, so I'm adding some white gel pen highlights around the letters on my hug sentiment, but I do end up wanting to add a little bit of vellum, which you'll see after I die cut my hug character here. I just needed a little more something to distinguish between my dark bold background and the rest of my card. So like I said, I'm going to grab a sheet of vellum and trim it down. So I added a little bit of ink to my hugging character, and here you can see this is where I think it's just going to look a little too bold. I don't have a soft enough background. So I am going to grab my paper cutter, and I'm going to trim my background sentiment to be 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to trim an eighth of an inch off on all 4 sides, so that way my design still looks centered. And then I'm going to trim my vellum to be 3 3/4 by 5 inches, so I have an even space around all 4 sides. Now, the way I'm going to attach everything onto the card, I didn't want a bunch of adhesive showing through the vellum, so I'm actually going to grab an adhesive sheet, which is just a big, long, piece of adhesive, and it has 2 sides of the protector or the backing of adhesive. And I'm going to trim it down to fit perfectly behind my vellum, so it will also be 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'm just going to trim it real quick off camera, and then I'm going to peel off one side of my adhesive sheet, and I'm going to apply the vellum to it, and I'm going to line it up as best as I can. It isn't perfect, so I will trim it down a little bit on one of the edges, but I just slowly peel back the adhesive sheet and add my vellum, and it will be able to adhere down to my background without being, very obvious that there is adhesive because it's one big giant sheet. Now, because I did some stenciling on some thin cardstock. It does have a little bit of a curl to it. So I'm grabbing my grip mat and I place the guide behind it, and then I'm laying that piece down and it keeps it nice and flat and in place. And then I'd added my adhesive or my vellum layer with the adhesive, and I'm just using a scoring tool to make sure that piece is nice and stuck to my background. And it just softens the background enough to add my images and my sentiment, and now it pops off, I think, a little bit more than it did before, where it just was too lost on such a bold background. So I'm going to use some foam adhesive to add my little hugging die cut here. So I added a bunch. I'm peeling off the release paper, and I'm going to adhere it to the top right hand corner, lining the edges up from the arms and the corner to the edge of the vellum. I'm going to add some adhesive behind my hug sentiment, and I'm thinking pretty soon here I'm going to realize that I didn't stamp my sentiment onto the vellum before I started adhering everything together, but that's okay. I'm going to make do with stamping on some white cardstock in just a minute here. So again, using the grid on my mat as well as the grip mat to get my hugs sentiment where I want it. And yes, so I'm kind of bummed that I forgot to stamp down my sentiment, but that's okay. I'm going to do the bring it in, and I'm going to stamp it on some white cardstock. So I'm grabbing some black ink and I'm just going to stamp it onto a small piece of white cardstock, and I'll grab my tiny little scissors to do some fussy cutting. I'm going to bubble cut around the sentiment so it looks a lot like the hug sentiment that I die cut. I added some adhesive and I'm just gluing that down to the open space right above my hugs. I wanted it to kind of look like my little purple guy there was saying, to bring it in for a hug. I have a card base and I'm just using some wet adhesive, and I'm going to completely cover the back side of my background here with everything already adhered to it, and I'm going to center that to my A2 card. Once I'm done, I know that it needs a little touch of something, so I'm grabbing some pops of color. This is Midnight Purple in a gloss, and I'm going to add 6 little dots to my card. I do everything in kind of sets of 3. It's my favorite go-to when I'm adding embellishments. I'm going to tap on the inside of the card to give them more of a domed look rather than a kind of Hershey Kiss look. And then I'm going to grab my white gel pen and I'm going to add some highlights to my purple die cut hugging character here just to make it tie in a little bit more with my sentiment and give it a little bit more dimension and pop off the card. Here's a final look at how my Retro Hugs card turned out. I really love the new grip mat and I hope you'll check it out. Like I said, it's perfect for stenciling, keeping your pieces together, making it easy to adhere your sentiments with its shadow dies. It's really great, and I'll definitely be using it a lot in the future, so keep your eye out for it in future videos. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!